Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I'm Dr. Javed Iqbal Kokar, Professor of Forensic Medicine and Toxicology, and I'm discussing the crime scene investigation in this lecture. And the learning objective will be that we'll discuss what is crime scene investigation and what are the main objective of this investigation and what are the duties of a doctor who are involved in crime scene investigation. What are their responsibilities? What are their objectives to be fulfilled at the scene of crime? And how we reconstruct the chain of events. So, regarding the introduction of forensic sciences, because this is one of the branch, crime scene investigation is one of the branch of forensic sciences. Forensic medicine, as such, is not an individual subject or an independent subject, but it is an umbrella term which consists of other discipline of sciences and touches almost every boundary of the medical subject. When we talk about the extent and level, the subject spreads to almost every branch of medicine and not confined to the criminal matters only. This means that whether we are conducting as surgeon, as physician, as gynecologist, wherever we are working, we are bound to obey certain laws, or when there is some misadventure happens or some negligence happens, we are answerable in the court of law. So that's why this is not confined to only the criminal matters, but the legal matters or the medical matters are also involved. The other fields which are related with their forensic odontology, study of the teeth, this is very important job, forensic anatomy, forensic radiology, forensic ballistics, psychology, forensic serology, forensic toxicology. Then crime scene investigation, DNA profiling, and these are all very important forensic science specialties and they adjunct with the forensic medicine. Every science has got a role. Regarding the crime scene investigation, we have to reconstruct the incident, how it could have happened, try to reconstruct the event because the medical legal investigation has to be carried out. And most important thing is that we are looking for the trace evidence. That means any tiny amount, any trace left over at the scene of crime helps in identifying its identity. And identity of this trace will lead to the identity of the individual who is responsible for the committing of this crime. Because we know that this is under the low card exchange principle, that is contact trace evidence. Every contact leaves a trace. When two things come into contact with each other, there is exchange of material from one to the other and from both of them to the scene of crime and from the scene of crime to both of them. So it's a two-way process. And this trace will establish the identity because we have to establish corpus delicti, which is the body of the crime, which is not only the physical body of the victim, but actually the body of the crime, which means the criminal responsibility have to be fixed. Who is responsible? And beyond doubt, this should be determined. Only then we can hold a person responsible for committing that crime which led to the situation of this particular event. So the medical jurisprudence is sometimes also called as forensic, legal or state medicine, and it is defined as that branch of medical science which deals with the application of principles of practice of medicine or medical knowledge but for the purpose of law, where the law needs the help of medical men. They are not the medical people. They will refer the case to you whatever assault has occurred, whether this is physical assault, sexual assault, they will refer the case to the medical man and he or she will determine whether the assault has been executed or not. Then medical jurisprudence, if we mean it, that it means legal aspect of medicine. That means we are conducting medically, but there are certain legal aspects which are attached to it. Laws of consent, laws of negligence. So there are certain laws, PPC, Pakistan Penal Code, certain privileges, certain prerogatives it gives. So all the legal aspect when we are conducting medically as in any capacity, that is medical jurisprudence. And forensic medicine, this is the medical aspect of law. That means where the law needs the help of medical man, they will refer the case to you and you are to help the law to fulfill their objective what they require from you. This is one example, like a case study, a forensic investigator, when you go to the visit to the scene of crime in a case of alleged suicidal burn due to marital disharmony. शादीशुदा जिंदगी में कोई इख्तलाफ हुआ तो आग लग गई and it is supposed that alleged is suicide, then how you will proceed? Just think what are the precautions to be taken and what is to be collected from the scene of crime. So this is visiting to the scene of crime. You will have a brainstorm, how will you proceed for it. Now what is a crime scene? Crime scene is a place where the crime has occurred and its investigation, it is basically a teamwork. That means there is a role of police investigation, then the forensic science visit to the scene of crime, and the medical part like conducting the medical legal examination or autopsy if it is the death of the individual. Then how crime scene look like? The area is cordoned off and every object is labeled, everything is labeled, and they try to develop how it could have happened, try to reconstruct the crime scene. So the crime scene is basically a location where illegal act took place and it comprises the area from where most of the physical evidence can be collected, because every contact leaves a trace and this is the area where the crime has happened, that is the crime scene, and from where you are going to collect the evidence, the physical evidence which is lying there, and you have to search and you have to find it out and collect and then identify it, and identification of this trace will lead to the identification of the individual who is responsible. It may be outdoor, it may be indoor, it may be any conveyance, any vehicle, any location may be primary, or sometimes it is a secondary, that one location will lead to the another location. So the place can be any. Forensic lab basically do not solve the crime. They just analyze the evidence. The evidence which you have collected from the scene of crime is being sent to the laboratories for its investigation, for its finding out what it is and what is its identity. They analyze this evidence and that's how they help. They do not solve the crime, but they help you in identifying that case, and you being the investigator, you can solve the crime. To proceed for the crime scene investigation, two things are most important. First of all, the physical evidence. You have to search for the physical evidence there. Any or all the objects found on the scene of crime, or they make a link between the crime and the victim, or the victim and the assailant. So the physical evidence, this is the most important job. You should establish the relationship of that physical evidence to the victim or to the assailant. Then the crime scene itself. Second thing is crime scene itself, because that is the beginning point from where you can get that physical evidence, and this is the beginning point from where the investigation will start. So this is the main point from where the crime scene investigator will start its investigation. A thorough investigation of crime of scene is very important. And what are the classification of crime scenes? They are based on basically the motive of the crime. Like it is a homicide, it's a robbery, it's a sexual assault, or it's a terror attack. So every assault will have its specific locations and specific observations, specific physical evidences which you will be searching for. So you should first know what type of incidents it. Then mode of committing a crime, that it is an organized crime or disorganized crime. This will also help in identifying. Then criminal behavior, that is active or passive criminal behavior. Then physical location, the site, that is indoor, outdoor, any vehicle, inside vehicle, or any place, that is the site. Now, how will visit the scene of crime? Usually, police officers, they have to reach first on the scene. They cordon off the area, they call the ambulance and make arrest of people if they are there, the culprits to who are responsible, and if there is any injured, they will make sure that he is carried to the hospital. So police is the first respondent to reach. Then crime scene investigation unit or forensic lab unit. They secure the scene of crime, collect, preservation and dispatch of the specimen, and then record it to the concerned lab they sent. Then medical examiner. Then specialist. They are looking for the evidences which require expert analysis like forensic and entomologists, forensic scientists, forensic psychologists. So these are specialists which will help in the crime scene investigation. Then detectives, they will interview the witness, they will interview the crime scene, consult the crime scene investigation units, and they will investigate the crime. So these are the persons they can visit, they will helpful in crime scene investigation. Then what are the objective of crime scene investigation? Using generally the most common scientific principle, the low card exchange principle, the forensic techniques, the crime scene can achieve their objective. Low card exchange principle is that there is a exchange of material when they come in contact, and it's a two-way process. Then various forensic techniques like DNA profiling or any other technique that can be used, and they will recognize, these are the steps: recognition, identification, individualization, and reconstruction of the scene of crime. Recognition: survey the scene of crime, document it, and try to collect the information. Then identification: comparison testing is done. You have to identify that whether this is the material which I am searching for. Then individualization, evaluation and interpretation of a particular evidence. Then the reconstruction, reporting and representing that. Now the question arises, what happened? Where did it happen? When did it happen? And why did it happen? Who may have responsible for these actions? And how was the incidents carried out? So these are the questions which, as a crime scene investigator, you have to answer, get the answer. Now regarding the processing of this scene of crime, secure and protect the scene, check the victim if he is alive and injured, sent to the hospital through ambulance, secure the area with tapes, and evidences must be protected. Witness do not leave the site. They should be held there because you have to collect the information from them. Record the scene, the photographs, the scene, make the sketch, make the notes, and collect the evidence. Then locate and mark the evidence. Collect, pack, label the evidences, and dispatch and submit the report. So these are the steps which have to be taken out one after the other. Now the phase of search. There are three phases: an overview phase, search phase, recover phase, and review phase. In overview phase, in this phase the examiner should go all the history of the case, study the documents, and visit the scene of crime. That means an overall view of the incidents is gathered and should have an overall view of the scene of crime, position of the body, position of the various objects. He should look for them. Then in the phase of search, in this phase the examiner should concentrate on the areas of interest. That is, what are the areas depending upon the type of the incidents. You should look for what area will be important. For example, if it is sexual assault, naturally the private parts and those regions will be important, genital region besides crime scene. So the examiner should concentrate on the areas of interest and should search for the evidence. Move the things, move the body upside down and change the position and look underneath the body. So he should move the things and look for the evidences. Then the phase of recovery. In this phase, the specimens are collected and each item should be identified, noted for its location, and if possible, it should be photographed. Each item is collected, labeled, preserved, and packed. Then the phase of review. In this phase, go through all the three phases: an overview, the search, and the recovery, because once you will leave that place and the evidence which is left forever. So you should have an again review of the whole situation of the all phases and ensure that nothing is left, because if left then it will be left forever and you may miss some important evidence. So this is how the crime scene investigation, it is labeled, cordoned off, and each point is labeled and tagged. Locating the evidence. How? Search for the evidence, and there are three methods. Grid method, that is, you divide into horizontal and longitudinal, and each grid area is detailed, search in detail. Then there is a spiral pattern, and this spiral is either you start from the center and in a spiral fashion you go around, or you start from the periphery and in a spiral way go to the center. Either from center in a spiral way go to the periphery, or from periphery you go to the center and try to search each and every spot. And the third method is the parallel, that in parallel way you move forward and in each step of your line you will search for everything. So these are the methods of searching. You are searching for the evidence. They are collected from the body by the medical examiner, and those evidences include victim's clothing, fingernail scrapings, head or the pubic hairs, blood, vaginal, oral or anal swabs, any bullets or any other foreign body which is present beside the body, on the body, hand swabs. So these are various specimens which are collected by the medical people. Then collecting and dispatching properly, because you may not damage them, you may not tamper them, you may not putrefy them. So general instruction regarding the collection: the specimen should be collected properly in a glass or plastic bottle. Paper bags can be used, but they are used for the larger evidences. Mailing envelopes, small envelopes should not be used. Hair fiber placed in a vial, which is then placed in a paper bag. Wet evidence, it is first dried in air and then it is collected. So these are general instructions. Then what the collector should know, because his attitude is most important. The collector should have complete knowledge of choice of specimen, because every incidence is a different event. So in each case, the choice of specimen depends upon the type of the incidence. Then site, from where it is to be collected, choice of specimen, and from where, this is important, from where it is to be collected. Then how to collect it, that means the procedure of collection. Then the type of preservative, if it is some biological material, you have to preserve it, what preservative is used, and you should know what preservative will helpful and will not damage the specimen. Then the size and material of the container. Material should be inert, it should not interact with the evidence. Size should be proper that it can easily be put in. So the specimen may be present in three forms, it may be dry form, wet form, or mixed with some other articles. If it is dry form, it is scraped. So how you collect the dry specimen? Scrap that specimen, and in a glazed paper funnel you can pour into a test tube or in either. Or you can soak the swab with the normal saline, rub it over the dry stain, and then that swab is dried in air and that is preserved. So this swab which is dried in air can be used as specimen. If it is in wet form, then dry the specimen and then scrap it or wipe it. And if it is mixed with some other article, then cut that portion, separate it and preserve it. Then the container for the preservative, usually it should be appropriate size, and it is preferably glass container, but being fragile, usually the plastic containers are preferred. The size and shape of the container should be such that the material can be placed in it easily. And this is important, the chain of custody. That means anyone or all who are handling the specimen at a particular instant should be able to certify the extent of handling. To make it sure, to make it secret, the chain of custody, it is very important that they should be able to certify. That is what was collected, it is labeled, why it was collected, which test is going to be done, and to whom it is handed over. It is a written receipt. When it was handed over, that is date and time, and for how long it remained. Handing over, then taking over. It will tell the time of custody. So the chain of custody should be maintained to avoid the adulteration and tampering. And the principles, they are important to observe, because these chain of custody should be maintained until they are presented in the court of law. Every evidence which is collected in a crime scene, that is the part and parcel of that crime, that is the property of that incident, and it has to be presented in the court of law. Handling should be certified, that means it must be on written receipt. The person handing over and taking over should sign with the name, date and time. And the principle of chain of custody is secrecy should be maintained by shorter the chain, surer it is. That means as minimum persons as it is possible, they should be there. That minimum number of persons should be involved. And surer the chain, better it is. Surer the chain, that means they should certify handing and taking over. So that these are the principle, minimum number of persons involved and certifying people handing and taking over. So this is the principle. Then after receiving the sample, for example, if you have received the dead body being the medical examiner or the medical legal officer or the forensic expert, he can conduct the autopsy and he will determine the cause of death and upon the autopsy finding, and he is also an expert witness. He will try to find out the identity. He will establish the time since death, date of death, determine the medical cause of death, and injury. What injury was responsible? It was gunshot or it was natural cardiac arrest. So he will try to find it out and should easily classify between differentiate between cause, mode, and manner of death. So why it is important for the doctors to visit the scene of crime? Because the objective of visiting the doctor to the scene of crime is that this provide the first hand observation and he is gather the information by himself, minimize the misinterpretation. If anybody else tells, that can misinterpret, then selection of biological evidence is the job of the doctor, and the method of preservation he is best known to that person. So in this we have learned in this lecture what is the crime scene and its types, what is the crime scene investigation unit and its duties, what are the phases of search, what are the principles used, precautions, and chain of custody. So thank you very much. This is all about crime scene investigation. Take care. Allah Hafiz.